My apologies. I forgot to look at the little sidebar there and realized that there's more to Section 5.1 than just the introduction to who Shakespeare was. We actually introduced the major play we're talking about, Much Ado About Nothing, here. So I'm going to put this up as 5.1 Part 2. Okay, so Much Ado About Nothing takes place in the Italian seaport city of Messina, a Renaissance city in the 16th century. This was a common setting for many of Shakespeare's plays. During the time of the play, the city was under the rule of Spain, Aragon. Do they mean King Aragon? Or is, because Spain would be called Hispania, wouldn't it? Maybe they mean King Aragon. Messina was an ancient city established by the Greeks, and audiences would have associated it with love, similar to how one might view modern-day Paris as the city of love. In fact, the play begins with the mixing of two different love stories. One is between a young woman named Hero and a young officer, Claudio, while the other is between two other characters, Beatrice and Benedick. To open the play, the governor of Messina, who is named Leonato, and his household get word of the imminent arrival of a group of soldiers who have been victorious in battle, Don Pedro, Claudio, and Benedick. With them is Don John, Don Pedro's illegitimate brother, who was defeated in his attempt to overthrow his brother. Despite this, Don John has been accepted back into his family. Leonato's niece, Beatrice, sarcastically pokes fun at Benedick. She and Benedick trade insults filled with puns, sarcasm, and figurative language. The two youngsters try to give the impression that they're both immune to love, but the audience can sense the flirtation between them. Their friends eventually trick each into thinking that the other is in love with them, in the hopes that both will reveal their true feelings. Meanwhile, Claudio professes his love for Leonato's daughter, Hero, and wants to ask for her hand in marriage. While Benedick makes fun of him, Claudio's commander, Don Pedro, offers to help him woo Hero by disguising himself as Claudio at the masked ball and proposing the marriage. Leonato's servant, however, believes he overhears that Don Pedro will be confessing his own real love for Hero. This occurs while one of Don John's followers correctly... This is a lot of information. This occurs when one of Don John's followers correctly overhears that Don Pedro will be wooing for Claudio, not for himself. Okay. I think I follow. A self-proclaimed villain, Don John is eager to deceive Claudio and his brother. Self-proclaimed villain. Don John calls himself a villain. Okay, Don John is eager to deceive Claudio and his brother, Don Pedro, who recently bested him in battle. He is also bitter about his illegitimate birth. Okay, so, real quick, they refer to him as illegitimate. That means his father, right, Don Pedro's illegitimate brother. It means Don Pedro and Don John share the same father, but Don John is the child of an affair. So, Don Pedro's mother is the legitimate wife of the father, and Don John is the result of an affair. Okay. He's also bitter about his illegitimate birth and the fact that Claudio and his brother share a close friendship. One of Don John's servants arranges a scene. Is this just the entire play? Okay, Leonato is the governor of Messina. Hero is the daughter of that governor, and is the love interest of Claudio. I'm going to link down Claudio's love interest. Claudio is a count from Florence, Italy, and he's Hero's love interest. Okay, so Hero is interested in Claudio, and Claudio is also interested in Hero. Hero is a weird name for a girl, but we'll stick with it. Beatrice is the strong, opinionated niece of Leonato, so she's a noble, but she's the niece of a governor. Benedick's romantic interest will go down to Benedick. Soldier, Beatrice's love interest, so he's just a soldier. That's his only claim to fame, is that he's one of the victorious soldiers. Up to Antonio. Antonio is Leonato. Leonato is the governor. Antonio is his brother. Okay, Margaret is Hero's attendant. So Hero is important enough to have an attendant. She's got like an assistant with her at all times. Okay. Don Pedro is the Prince of Aragon. So if you want to think of him as having a last name, it's Don Pedro Aragon. And he's a victor in battle, along with Benedict and Claudio. And they were just victorious in a battle, and so they're coming to the court of love to gain the rewards and probably look for a love interest of some sort. Don John is Don Pedro's illegitimate and evil brother. Okay, and he even admits, he calls himself a villain. Borachio is Don John's follower and Margaret's love interest. Okay, so they're two assistants. Borachio and Margaret are two assistants, and they're well, they didn't reflect it, so it's like Margaret has a crush on Borachio, but Borachio doesn't reciprocate. Okay, and Conrad follows Don John. Don John has two followers? Don John has two followers. Okay, and Dogberry is the constable in Messina, and he's a comic character. Okay, constable like a cop, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back through this. To open the play, the governor of Messina, Leonato, and his household get word of an imminent arrival of a group of soldiers. The soldiers are Don Pedro, Claudio, and Benedict. To follow, it helps to try to imagine somebody, imagine some face to this name to keep it kind of straight. So, Don Pedro, in my mind, has a big mustache, a big black mustache. Claudio is clean shaven with very short, fine hair, and Benedict has a full beard. How about that? With them is Don John, who has long, messy hair, but it's black, just like Don Pedro's. That's how you know they're brothers. They're both jet black hair, but John's is long and messy, like Sirius Black, who was defeated in his attempt to overthrow his brother. So Don John didn't like being illegitimate and wanted to overthrow the legitimate son, Don Pedro, but he failed in one-on-one battle. And he basically got the crap beat out of him. And now Don Pedro is even more legitimate than he was before. Despite this, Don John has been accepted back into the family. Leonato's niece, Leonato being the governor, Leonato's niece Beatrice sarcastically pokes fun at Benedict. Right? Benedict and Beatrice have a thing going. She and Benedict trade insults that are filled with puns, sarcasm, and figurative language. Two youngsters try to give the impression that they're both immune to love, but the audience can sense that they are flirting. Their friends eventually trick them into thinking that the other one is in love with them, in the hopes that they will both reveal their true feelings. Meanwhile, Claudio, who is Claudio? Is a count. He's not one of the soldiers. No, he is. He's one of the soldiers. Okay. Claudio's is the one that's clean-shaven, right? He's clean-shaven with short hair. Meanwhile, Claudio professes his love for Leonato's daughter, Hero, and wants to ask for her hand in marriage. While Benedict makes fun of him, since one of his fellow soldiers is making fun of him, Claudio's commander, Don Pedro's in charge, has a big mustache. Don Pedro offers to help him woo Hero by disguising himself as Claudio at the masked ball. We're gonna have a dance, and since everyone's wearing masks, he says, I'll wear the same mask, and I'm better at wooing than you are, so let me woo her for you. And that's a trope we've seen before. Leonato's servant, however, believes that he hears Don Pedro will be confessing his real love for Hero. Okay, Leonato. Leonato is the governor. Leonato's servant overhears him planning this and doesn't realize that he's doing it as a trick. He thinks Don Pedro really does love Hero. This occurs when one of Don John's followers actually correctly overhears the whole plan. Now I follow. A self-proclaimed villain, Don John is eager to deceive Claudio and his brother Don Pedro, who recently bested him in battle. He is also bitter about his illegitimate birth and the fact that Claudio and his brother share a close friendship. Okay, so I said Claudio was the clean-shaven one, right? Right. So Claudio and Don Pedro are close friends, and Don John hates this. One of Don John's servants arranges a scene in which Claudio and Don Pedro see a woman who looks like Hero being intimate with another man. Claudio is angry at Hero's apparent disloyalty and rejects her at the altar. Ooh. The wedding friar arranges for Hero to be hidden until Claudio can understand that the scene was false. Beatrice defends Hero and joins with Benedict to seek revenge for her. This leads to Benedict and Beatrice finally confessing their love for one another. Oh, good. Dogberry, the comic relief of the play, is a knight constable who learns of the conspiracy against Don Pedro and arrests Don John's men. Not Don John, but his servants. Claudio realizes his mistake in denouncing Hero. Since he thinks she is dead, he mourns her death and agrees to marry Hero's cousin. The cousin is Hero in disguise, having forgiven Claudio. Hero and Claudio are finally married. Beatrice and Benedict also decide to get married. Review the following list of characters that appear in Much Ado About Nothing. You may want to print this list so you can refer to it while you're reading the play. So what they say, the common saying is that for Shakespeare, tragedies end in a major death and comedies end in a wedding. So this is supposed to be a comedy. So it's a comedy of errors and mistaken identities. When you begin reading Act 1, Scene 1 of Much Ado About Nothing, keep in mind the list of characters shown here, particularly as each person is introduced and characterized. Then, as the plot becomes increasingly complicated, it may be helpful to refer back to the list to review characters' roles. This will help you avoid confusion. It also will help you follow the unfolding drama as well as the duplicitous, often comical events of the play. Alright. Exercise Shakespeare. In Shakespeare's plays, royal and high-class characters often speak in iambic pentameter, while lower-class characters speak in prose. The two love stories in Much Ado About Nothing occur between Beatrice and Benedict, and Hero and Claudio. Those are your two couples, your two power couples. Beatrice and Benedict, and Hero and Claudio. Shakespeare uniquely mixes the style of tragedy and comedy in his plays. Now that you've read the play summary, think about the relationship between Hero and Claudio. If love is defined as an intense feeling of deep affection, why might it be hard to believe the young people really love one another? Considering both the words and actions of their characters, write a persuasive answer to this question. So there's probably evidence in there that they're acting aloof or uncaring, and they don't really seem to feel that love. But then later on, when they're in such distress because the other one has abandoned them in some way, it makes sense. Okay. Quatrain. Quat means four. Quatrain means a four lines in a poem. 4-line stanza of poetry. A couplet. Couple of lines. 2 lines. 2-line stanza of poetry. Compilation. Putting together of related things. A book consisting of previously separate works. Canon is the collection of things that belong as the official record. Collection of list of books accepted as genuine. Right. So the canon of Shakespeare plays are the ones that everyone agrees Shakespeare actually wrote, and not someone else writing under Shakespeare's name. Verse is writing arranged in a set rhythm, often with a rhyming pattern. Yeah, I couldn't come to that on my own. A set rhythm, often with a rhyme. Meter is the rhythm. I know that one, a set rhythm in a line of poetry. Foot is 2 syllables. Combination of a strong stressed syllable with a weak unstressed syllable within a metrical line of verse. Yeah, 2 syllables. One is stressed, one is unstressed. Either it goes da-da or da-da. Right, either stressed then unstressed, or un then stress. So da-da or da-da. Hello or hello. Right? Capping couplet is a couplet at the very end of something else. Final 2 lines of rhyming text that close the scene or speech. Key points and links. Oh, Shakespeare is one of the most prolific, respected writers of all time. His language is highly figurative. His work falls in 4 general periods. Use dynamic pentameter, blank verse or prose. Although it's a comedy, the play mixes elements of comedy and tragedy. It follows 2 intertwining romances, that of Hero and Claudio and Beatrice and Benedict. Okay, now that does it for part 2 of 5.1. I'll try not to break up the next one into 2 parts.